Every time I open my DS Lite, I'm surprised by how nice the screen is. I'm not sure what it is. I think the device screams retro, and I'm used to terrible old Nintendo screens like those in the original Game Boys. But the DS Lite has a TFT LCD screen. I also might be conditioned to expect scaling issues from emulation consoles, where scaling old DS games to fit a modern display might produce weird blurs or artifacts. No, this is just a great stock screen made perfectly to display the games of its time. I don't have any sort of nostalgia for the DS Lite at all. I think I got mine a few years after it came out. I think I even traded in an Xbox 360 for one, and then I traded in my DS Lite back in for another Xbox 360. I used to work at GameStop, so we used to wheel and deal those trade-in promotions. Anyway, my nostalgia lies a few years earlier with like the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance and stuff like that. But I make a career out of messing around with these handhelds, and I always end up back on the DS Lite. I think it might still be my favorite piece of hardware that Nintendo has ever made still to this day. I think it just holds up the best. It's the perfect mix of retro and modern. It's the screen, or screens. It's also the size and the clamshell. You don't need a case at all, meaning it doesn't get any bulkier. It slips right into my jacket pocket. It's got the right amount of buttons and a phenomenal library of games. Mario games, Kirby's Canvas Curse, Nintendo, Sonic Rush, among some of my favorites. Some people's favorite Pokemon games are on here too. They even had Modern Warfare 3 on here. This thing was really ahead of its time. Not to mention it also has an entire Game Boy Advance in it. So the entire amazing Game Boy Advance library is also at your disposal. But the reason I decided to trade in my Xbox 360 for one at the time was this little cartridge that you can get off of some sketchy website called the R4DS. And I still have my original one from what, 15 years ago? And let me tell you, this thing still transforms the DS Lite into one of, if not the best handheld you can have around. Not only does this allow you to hold a massive library of games instead of having to lug around a folio of cartridges, it also unlocks some emulation potential. You can play Game Boy Advance games on an original DS Lite, but you cannot play Game Boy games. But now you can. You can also play SNES and other home console games that you couldn't before. I play with a lot of newer emulation consoles these days, and it's amazing how this 18-year-old system stacks up against those. 18. Oh, that one hurt. This was one of my gateway drugs into the world of emulation, and all these years later, it's still one of the most functional pieces of kit that I own. And for a phenomenal price point. This video is sponsored by Factor. Ooh, guess I should see what I got to eat. Yeah, I guess tonight it's the Cacio de Pepe. Hey, did you happen to see where the rest of this Factor meal went? Because it was a full one a minute ago. You want to help me look for it? Let's go. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you have to do is heat and enjoy. Skip the grocery store's prep work and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-curated, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. And they've got smoothies, they've got juices, they've got wellness shots, and now these protein shakes I've been drinking. I'm a busy guy, so I forget to eat sometimes. So having Factor around helps keep me a little healthier. You can make it in the microwave in 2 minutes, but I like to throw it in the oven for 7. And you can try it for yourself over at factor75.com and use the code YOUHUNGRY50 for a whole 50% off of your first Factor box and free wellness shots for life with any active subscription. You know what? You've been good. You can have a piece, but just a little piece. Wait a minute. What's on your breath? Smell like Fritos. That's normal. I always wanted one of these rose-colored DS Lites. It's definitely my favorite color that they made. And I got this one, I think at a convention. I already forgot. But this one is in beautiful condition. I haven't done anything to it. But it's not the only one that I own. A bit ago, I took a DS Lite with a somewhat broken top screen and ripped that top half right off to do the famous Game Boy Macro Mod. I like this DS a lot, but it's not a DS anymore. It's a Game Boy Advance without any backwards compatibility. I remember finding and resetting up this R4 cartridge for that project. I had some grandiose idea to load it up with Game Boy Advance games so that I wouldn't have any Game Boy Advance cartridges sticking out of the bottom. It turns out the DS has Game Boy Advance hardware in it, but that top DS cartridge slot does not have access to any of that Game Boy Advance hardware. So Game Boy Advance games running off of the R4 DS cartridge must be emulated by that DS hardware. So they're not gonna run as good as Game Boy Advance games running off of the Game Boy Advance cartridge slot.
Something's up with the audio.
I just watched a YouTube video where a guy says that GBA Runner, the app for the R4 cartridge, is the only app that runs Game Boy Advance games off of the original Game Boy Advance hardware in here. No, it doesn't. It says on their GitHub page right at the top that it runs the games in DS mode. Luckily, the GBA Easy Flash cartridges come with a low-profile shell specifically for DS Lites. I got one just to leave in this macro, so now you never even notice there's a cartridge in there. And this Easy Flash can also run Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. Those are being emulated too, but there's no noticeable sacrifice to quality. The Game Boy Advance hardware can more than handle it. That being said, I don't think that ripping the top screen off of your DS Lite makes it any better. I think that it's just a cool way to breathe some new life into your damaged hardware. Also, I think the top screen is way nicer than the bottom screen in my experience. The bottom screen is also more prone to yellowing, especially around the edges. Plus, your DS Lite would be far more useful by having a whole second screen in it. It's the whole purpose of the console. Also, it's way more useful to be able to just close it. The R4 that I have here is nothing fancy. It's one of the original ones. It's not even on the R4 website anymore. It also only works with original micro SD cards. See, I bet you didn't even know there was a difference. The only reason I know there's a difference between micro SD cards is because of this thing. Any micro SD card between around 4 gigabytes and 32 gigabytes will be a micro SD HC or high capacity card. If you buy an R4 now, these days, chances are you'll be just fine with one of those. I also have this R4 Gold that supports 3DS as well. This one I bought much more recently off of AliExpress. I'm pretty sure it's a knockoff because, believe it or not, there are knockoff of bootleg cards. It was only $12 and it came with a 64 gigabyte micro SD card that was loaded up with games. It says SDHC right on it, but a 64 gigabyte card worked just fine. If you have to buy a micro SD card for your R4, I'd still say get a 32 gigabyte card just to be safe. That is way more than enough space. Most DS ROMs are anywhere between 16 megabytes and 256 megabytes. So again, you got more than enough space on there. This thing has somewhere around 300 games on it, and it still has 6 gigabytes left. It's also got folders for Pokemon hacks and Castlevania hacks. You definitely don't need all of these on here if you're building your own R4. I didn't buy this for that massive library of games. I didn't even expect it to come with any. I bought this because of a YouTube short I made a little bit ago about the 2DS, the wedge-shaped one. Yeah, that one. It's about how that's the best deal in gaming right now. And I still stand by that because it's just $70, which is around the same price you'll be seeing DS Lites for on eBay. But it's a whole ass 2DS. So you can play the entire 3DS library as well. Sure, it's ugly as all sin, but you can't beat that bargain. It's worth mentioning though that these R4 carts do not work with 3DS games. You're only gonna be able to play DS games through here on your 3DS. It would be much easier to do that 3DS hack that I made a video on a few years ago. That way you can play whatever you want on there. I also made a video on the H Shop last year, which was a little bit of a controversial video among the emulation community because a lot of people didn't like that I shed some light on something that could easily be shut down. It's a weird little dance we have to do here. On the one hand, I don't want to lose a good thing either. And on the other hand, I don't want to gatekeep something that's great. I think people should know about it and enjoy it while it's around, especially after the closure of the 3DS eShop. Anyway, it is so easy to mod a 2DS or a 3DS that there's memes about it, but it's even easier to just get an R4 for a DS Lite. Chances are, if you get one today, it'll be ready to go right out of the box, just like this gold one was. But the firmware this came with isn't really great. I mean, it's fine, but I did have Call of Duty freeze on me the first 2 times that I tried to load it. It's also not the best UI for navigating games. There's tons of content on here and no way to sort by your most played games or favorites or anything. You can reflash the firmware on these, and it's as simple as just dragging and dropping files onto a fresh micro SD card. That's it. That's all it takes.
So you actually need this dsmenu.dat file, which is gonna be in the auto boot folder, and then you gotta find the flash cart that you have. Mine is original R4. And I just take this and I copied it right into the root folder. I guess that's just an extra step that I had to do. But I mean, come on, that's easy.
There's a couple of caveats, and if you have issues, you should read the wiki. But for the most part, that's all it takes, and that's all I've had to do. There's a bunch of different firmwares that you can get. You can get the official ones right off of the R4i website. There's YS menu that DNA Mobile Gaming has a tutorial on, and the links where you can download it. But on this old R4 cart that I have, I opted for Twilight menu, which has been around for a long while. It takes a bit to load, but when it finally does, it has a real nice UI that I like a lot, and that's why I went with it. There's a tutorial for this on the DS Homebrew Wiki, but again, it's as simple as just downloading the files and just moving them over to a freshly FAT32 formatted micro SD card. And they have the files right there. That's it. And that's yet another reason why I love the DS Lite. There's no messing around with emulator settings. You just pop the cartridge in and everything just works. There will be folders where you can put all of your different ROMs for all of your different systems. Don't expect to play any 3D systems on there. You're going to be maxing out at SNES and Game Boy Advance, or I guess DS. I love my Mii Mini. I talk about it a lot. That can play everything that this can, except for DS. And there's no need to worry about emulation quality on the DS because it's original hardware. Everything just runs great. There's also plenty of ROM hacks for Pokemon games that you can now also play on original hardware. I'd imagine that not all of them will work well. Some ROM hacks utilize extra performance boosts from emulators, so they won't all work on original hardware, but it's still fun to mess around with.
Oh, I can't play Horror White? Okay, I guess I can't play that. Okay, that one failed too. God damn it. I guess only the lame ROM hacks that are barely any different are the ones that are gonna work.
There are a surprising number of new Super Mario Bros. ROM hacks, and all the ones I've tried on here work great. There's also Wordle DS, and I just lost my streak because I popped the cartridge out like an idiot. I have some Japanese learning games on here that I'll probably never play. Well, one day, maybe one day. The only thing you'd have to worry about is emulation quality of older titles. Game Boy Advance runs great, but it could be better. If you want great emulation quality for Game Boy Advance, maybe double up and put an Easy Flash cartridge in here too, for the ultimate setup. Right now, the way that I have this original R4 setup is that it boots straight into the Twilight menu. It doesn't go to the DS Lite home screen at all. So, if you do want to put an Easy Flash in the bottom cartridge, maybe you should turn that setting off. There's a way to do that if you read the Twilight wiki. This R4 Gold, the way that it came set up, it boots into the DS menu still, so you can run this with an Easy Flash, no problem. Otherwise, you could also just take the cartridge out if you want to access the Game Boy Advance slot. SNES does not pass the Yoshi's Island test on the R4, but great news, we have that game for Game Boy Advance. So just play that one.
Oof. Doesn't even pass the Mario World test. This is a little wrong. We need some better Super Nintendo emulation.
I will go as far as to say that the DS Lite is Nintendo's best designed handheld. I like the 3DS, But we don't need 3D, and the Lite is so much sleeker. I play on a lot of Chinese emulation handhelds, and nothing beats original hardware. It's fun to see crisp pixels on a 1080p screen sometimes, but it's also fun seeing how they were originally intended to look. On a Game Boy, that means barely being able to see the screen. But the DS came about at a time when technology had advanced enough, and they might have been so ahead of their time that nothing has really hit the same since. A 3DS can do a lot of the same stuff that a DS can do, minus the Game Boy Advance hardware. If you want a bit more power and a whole library of 3DS games at your disposal, then maybe you want to shell out the extra couple of bucks for a 3DS, and put aside some time to do that hack to it. If you want to save some money, get a 2DS Wedge that can do all of the same stuff. If you want one of the best designed pieces of original hardware to play your retro ROMs with no effort at all, get a DS Lite and an R4. 15 years later, it's still an absolute treasure. The only thing better might be a Game Boy Micro, but those are like $300, so f that. So what do you guys think about the DS Lite paired with an R4? A lot of you guys watching this are emulation guys, so how do you think this stands against some of these hundreds of dollars of emulation handhelds that we've been using these days? Some of those are awesome, but this has been getting me thinking, like, if I'm playing like a Game Boy Advance and DS and under, why would I play it on anything else? Leave in the comments below, at me on Twitter, any and all this other social media garbage, and let me know if you've never tried any of this and now you're gonna give it a try. Thank you, Factor, for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check them out at the link in the description. We stream all the time on twitch.tv/Wulffden, where we mess around with stuff like this, and you can be there live in the chat and we can talk about this stuff. You can help me make these videos. And of course, the most important thing that you can do to help support this channel is just subscribe, share this video with a friend. A friend who's maybe got a DS Lite laying around. This could get them to want to dust it off. Thank you guys very much. Have yourself a good week. Oh, these shirts. Don't forget that Wulffdenapparel.com. Come on.